Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm so glad you could join us. Today we're going to dive into a story you might think you know. But trust me, there's way more to it than meets the eye. We're talking Oskar Schindler. Yeah, that's Schindler. But we're really looking at the woman who was essential to his efforts, his wife Amelia.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how one name can just become like the symbol for a whole historical event. But what about all those untold stories? The people we don't always hear about?
Exactly. So today we're going to try and uncover those hidden figures and really understand Amelia Schindler's life, what she saw, and what it all means in this big, complex chapter of history.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to Amelia's early life.
Mm.
Picture it. Rural Moravia, rolling hills, peaceful farm life. Sounds pretty idyllic, right?
It's like something out of a storybook.
Well, it was until World War I came along. Amelia's father came back from the trenches a changed man, struggling with what we now know was PTSD.
Yeah, the effects of trauma like that can have a huge impact, even ripple through generations. I mean, think about it. Amelia basically became her father's caregiver when she was still so young. And you have to wonder how that experience shaped her sense of responsibility and empathy.
It's pretty powerful to think that those early life events can affect us so much even later on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then into her life walks Oskar Schindler, this charming, charismatic salesman who just sweeps young Amelia off her feet. They even say she used to peek out the window as his car was coming up the road.
Oh, that's cute.
Talk about a whirlwind romance, right?
Eh.
But of course, her parents weren't exactly thrilled. Oskar had a bit of a reputation, not exactly known for being the most faithful guy.
Yeah, and their early marriage definitely reflected that. There was infidelity children born outside of the marriage. It seemed like maybe Oscar wasn't quite ready to be the devoted husband Amelia had hoped for.
You'd think that would be it.
Yeah, you would. But here's the thing that always gets me. Amelia didn't just walk away, she stuck it out. Makes you wonder about her character, doesn't it? Her strength, this dedication to the vows she made.
That's a really good point. So now let's fast forward a bit to the Schindlers' move to Krakow. We're talking 1939. The Nazi occupation is in full swing, and Oskar, ever the businessman, sees an opportunity. He takes over a factory that had been owned by Jewish businessmen, a move that would change everything.
And at first, things are actually pretty good for them. I mean, they're thriving. Amelia is enjoying the perks that come with their new wealth and status. But then reality sets in.
The ghetto in Krakow was right there in front of them.
Exactly. Amelia sees firsthand the horrific conditions, the systematic dehumanization of Jewish people, and it starts to change her. She talks about seeing them reduced to slaves, just struggling to survive. It's a stark contrast to the comfortable life she's gotten used to.
It's around this time that Amelia decides to withdraw to the Sudetenland, a region in Czechoslovakia that had been annexed by Germany. And it almost seems like she's trying to distance herself from what's happening in Krakow, while Oskar is still deeply involved in the city's wartime economy.
It's interesting, isn't it? The Sudetenland was seen as a safer, more German area at the time. So Amelia going there brings up all sorts of questions. Was it a way to cope with the moral conflict she was feeling, maybe some form of denial? Or could it have been the start of a deeper internal struggle?
And that struggle comes to a head when the order comes down to close all the factories in Krakow.
Which would have meant what? Sending all of Schindler's Jewish workers to the concentration camps.
Can you imagine the panic? The fear?
Yeah.
Certain death for so many people.
That must have been terrifying.
Oskar, who's used to smooth talking and bribes, is frantic.
Yeah.
But Amelia steps up with this incredible resolve.
In her own words, she said, "I felt I just had to help him. After all, I was his wife." But I think there's a shift happening here, too. It's not just about duty anymore. It's about taking action, fighting for what she believes is right. This is Amelia taking on a leadership role driven by her own compassion.
Wow. And she's doing all of this while facing immense danger. Amelia plays a vital role in negotiating the relocation of the factory to Brunlitz, in what is now the Czech Republic. And she's doing a lot of this while Oskar is off doing his own thing.
This is where the dynamic between them gets really interesting. In Brunlitz, Amelia basically becomes the leader, making sure the Jewish workers under their care are safe and well. She takes it upon herself to shield them from the worst of the Nazi regime.
It's incredible. She smuggled medicine and milk into the factory, even convinced a local farmer, Frau Dahlbeck, to give them grain. And it wasn't just about their physical needs.
Right. She understood how important it was to treat them like human beings, to preserve their dignity. She even brought in knitting supplies to give them a sense of purpose and some normalcy in all the chaos.
It's powerful stuff. Think about those acts of defiance. In the face of unimaginable cruelty, she's smuggling in basic necessities, trying to give people a little bit of dignity back. Incredibly risky.
It really makes you think about what was driving her. Was it pure duty to her husband? Or something more, maybe this deep empathy that went against everything the Nazis stood for?
This is a question we're going to keep exploring as we go deeper into Amelia's story. But one thing is clear. Amelia wasn't just standing by and watching her husband do his thing. She's a force in her own right, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. So before the break, we were talking about Amelia's incredible courage in Brindlitz, creating that haven for the Jewish workers. But like with any wartime story, it's what happens after the war that's also so important.
Yeah, it's almost like we see a complete role reversal. Oscar, being Oscar, seeks out the spotlight.
Makes sense.
He fully embraces this hero narrative, the guy who outsmarted the Nazis.
Which she did.
Oh, absolutely. But he also maybe embellished some things along the way. Let's just say that.
Right. So while he's doing all that, what's Amelia's story? What's happening with her?
Well, her post-war experience was completely different. We're talking financial ruin, obscurity. She ends up living in poverty in Argentina.
Seriously?
Yeah. There's even this story about her having to gather bones just to make ends meet. It's a world away from the life Oscar is building for himself back in Europe.
Wow. That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is. But you know what? I think this is where we see a different kind of strength in Amelia. It's about resilience. Quietly rebuilding your life after everything has been shattered, finding comfort in the things she knew from her childhood, animals and nature.
I think you're right. Sometimes we focus so much on those big heroic gestures that we forget about the everyday acts of survival. The will to just keep going. That's powerful too.
Yeah. Okay, but here's where things get really interesting. Remember those testimonies from the Schindler Jews?
The ones that really helped shape how people saw Oscar.
Exactly. And shielded him from some pretty serious accusations about his early involvement with the Nazis.
It's complicated for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. A really complex legacy. But here's the thing. Those same Schindler Jews, the ones Amelia fought so hard to protect, they became her advocates decades later.
Oh, really?
They remembered her compassion, all those small acts of kindness that meant the world in the midst of the Holocaust. And because of them, in 1994, Amelia finally gets the recognition she deserves.
That's incredible, but also kind of sad.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so moving to see Amelia step out from behind Oscar's fame and have her own courage acknowledged. But it also makes you think, why did it take so long? She went through years of hardship while Oscar was in the spotlight. It doesn't seem fair.
It's not. And it shows just how much history tends to favor the loudest voices, the most dramatic stories. But we need to remember those quieter stories, too. Those acts of bravery and kindness that happen out of the spotlight. Amelia's story reminds us that heroism takes many forms.
Makes you wonder how many other Amelia Schindlers are out there, right? People who quietly fought for what was right, risked their lives to save others. Maybe their stories aren't in the history books or made into movies, but they matter just as much.
You got it. We have to look beyond the one dominant narrative and recognize those unsung heroes, the individuals who made a difference in their own way.
You know, it's amazing to think that all these years after the war, it was the Schindler Jews who really made sure Amelia's story was told, that she got the recognition she deserved. It just shows how much of an impact she had on their lives.
It really does. When you read their testimonies, you get this powerful sense of Amelia's character. They talk about her warmth, her compassion, her absolute dedication to making sure they were okay. It proves that even in the darkest times, human connection can still shine through.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, right, what if Amelia hadn't taken those risks? What if she hadn't stepped up like she did in Brindlitz? How many of those people wouldn't be here today?
It's a chilling thought, but I think it really shows how much her actions mattered. We can't know for sure, obviously, but there's no doubt that Amelia's presence made a huge difference. She didn't just provide for their physical needs, but she gave them hope. This belief that even in the darkest times, humanity could still win out.
So as we start to wrap up our deep dive into Amelia's life, I think it's important to think about what her story teaches us about history itself.
I totally agree. It reminds us that history isn't just about the big picture and the famous people. It's about all those individuals who make choices, big and small, that change the course of events. It's about digging deeper and finding those hidden stories, the voices that are often pushed aside or forgotten.
Amelia's story challenges us to rethink what we think we know about heroism. It's not always about those big public displays. Sometimes it's the quiet courage, the unwavering compassion, the willingness to risk everything for other people even when nobody's watching.
And it's a story that still resonates today. It reminds us that we all have the capacity for empathy and for taking action. We all have the power to stand up against injustice and suffering and make a difference. Amelia's legacy is a call to action, an inspiration to fight for what's right no matter what.
So as we end our deep dive, I hope you've come away with a new understanding of Amelia Schindler, the woman behind the list. Her story is such a powerful reminder that even in the face of pure evil, human kindness and courage can prevail.
Absolutely. And don't forget, this is just the beginning of the journey. There are so many more untold stories out there waiting to be discovered. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep into the complexities of history and what it means to be human.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed our deep dive into Amelia Schindler's extraordinary life, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating explorations into the lesser-known corners of history. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.